it is time for our next panel discussion now, the Diversity and Inclusion Forum. Let me welcome our speakers, Peter Zerp, Supplier Inclusion and Diversity Client Program Lead at Accenture, Javier Lopez Gomez, Global Head of Corporate Sustainability at SGS Group, Javette Hines, the Global Head of Supply Chain Development, Inclusion and Sustainability at Citi, and Ainur Amazova, Head of Talent, Culture and Inclusion at BAT Kazakhstan. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Great.
Thank you so much for joining us here.
Hello, everyone.
We're excited to get stuck in. So we'll get kicked straight off with the importance to business, a nice broad one. How has the importance of D&I changed for business? Peter, if we can start with you.
Oh gosh.
Straight into
so first, my role is more around supply diversity. So helping engage more diverse suppliers into Accenture and to our client supply chains. So definitely what I see with supply diversity is that it brought more visibility for us to those innovative suppliers that we otherwise would not have seen. So it's really about building access, creating access so that you get, the right diverse talent into, for my role at least, into our supply chain. If I look at a company, we are 780,000 people worldwide. So for us, attracting talent is super important. So what it has done for us is that, we are able to attract and keep diverse talent for our company.
It's incredible. Javier, what about you?
Yeah, so, first of all, thanks for having me here today. It's a pleasure. I'm the Global Head of Corporate Sustainability at SGS, so D&I is part of the aspects that we tackle within the ESG strategy. And I would say that's the main thing that has evolved, the importance of this topic within the ESG strategies. I see how, in our company in particular, and many companies as well, generally speaking, tend to give much more relevance to those topics. As well, we see more relevance in the regulation, and this is the what we've seen in the last years as well in our company. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Javette, do you have anything to add to that from your perspective?
I'll just say, of course, I manage Citi's supply chain development, inclusion, and sustainability efforts, and that does include supplier diversity and supply chain sustainability. And so, like Peter, I'm very focused on business diversity. And so as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, working in tandem with our workforce team, really to understand what are we talking about with respect to the employees, but certainly as it relates to supplier diversity, really being intentional about understanding who our suppliers are and ensuring that there's a diverse consideration within our supply chain about whom we do business with across the globe.
About from a BAT perspective, Ainur.
It's very similar. I think it's not a surprise our external environment is very volatile and diverse, which creates very challenging, diverse issues, which can be solved only with diverse teams. So definitely it helps to have D&I teams in place and KPIs to solve and be better equipped. And that's would be, I think, 100% correlation. You have to be up and fit for the challenges.
Amazing. So lots straight in there with supply chain, which I think is so interesting. Let's go on to bias in business decisions. How do you guys find that unconscious bias can affect environmental and business decisions? Javette, do you want to start us off with that?
I think I'll just say generally, with respect to bias, definitely it can make a difference, right, in terms of how decisions are made, because there could be considerations based on situations that impact one economically. So it could be an underserved community versus a community that is perhaps well off. And so if a decision is made to provide more focus on one versus the other, that certainly is an example where bias could come into play.
Amazing. What about you, Peter? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, if I look at supply diversity, there's definitely a bias around having a supply diversity program. I'm in Amsterdam in Europe. So, supply diversity is not as mature yet as, for instance, in the US. So people still have the misconception about, we're hiring businesses because they're diverse. And of course, that's not the case. It's more about creating access, like I said before, but also create more of an equal playing field or equally leveled playing field, so that companies that are otherwise not on our radar have an opportunity to bid for work. But at the end of the day, they still have to bid for the work. They still have to be the entrepreneur, pitch, and bring the right solution. So you constantly have to explain that. There's also a bias around, I think, diverse suppliers themselves, like, they're too small, they're not ready to supply to our company. And that's where we as leaders of supply diversity programs come into play, because we help them to be ready for that, making sure that, they can really bring their innovative solutions to our supply chain and are ready to be a good, strong supplier to us. Besides the fact that a lot of diverse suppliers are ready to supply to our companies. And the last one I wanted to mention is that I had a conversation last time with the diverse suppliers, and they said, when we come in to support our clients, what they expect us to be all diverse. And I said, but the fact that I'm a diverse-owned business doesn't mean that I only have people from my own community working for me. I myself are an inclusive business as well. So there's a lot of that, those kind of misconceptions that we have to demystify as well.
That's really interesting. So you work with the companies are looking to find diverse suppliers and embed that into their businesses, but you also work with the suppliers themselves around their diversity and that bias embedded in there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective to it. I just wanted to quickly turn to our viewers and remind you that we are still accepting questions. So if you do want to ask our amazing panel anything in particular, please do drop us a question, put your name down as well, and I will take that to them whenever it is appropriate. Back to our panel. Let's have a little look at teamwork then. Obviously, you're all leaders in this space. How do you think that leaders can promote inclusivity in your teams? Ainhoa, do you want to start us off with that?
Sure. Well, for me, what I observe and actually ask from people, if we want to encourage inclusivity, we should start from ourselves. Role modeling is the first thing to ensure that people will follow us. Yeah? And then the most important thing is to remember that it's not only behavioral change, it's a mindset change. And it might take more than a year, yeah? Because usually business leaders are very fast. They want miracle happen immediately. Yeah? And when they don't see the results immediately, tend to give up on this sustainable, let's say, pursuit of diversity. So first, I would say, start from yourself, have the principles, be a role model, show it, and people definitely feel it and they will follow. That's I think, number one rule for me. And have a patience.
That's brilliant. We've just had Julie Follmann-Niemann from Carlsberg talk about their D&I handbook, and one of the questions that came from the audience was, how do you encourage this uptake? And she said, you start with leadership. You get the leaders to fill it out, you get the leaders to do it, and then it trickles down. And it's all about starting with strong leadership, which is incredible. Javier, what about you? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I totally agree with this. I mean, the lead by example is the basic to start with, because the action, the action of the leaders set the tone of the group behavior. So demonstrating commitment to diversity and inclusion, showing interest in different perspectives, and giving visibility to everyone's achievement. All these things together communicate to the teams that the diverse backgrounds and different points of view are not only accepted, but they are also valued. Furthermore, I would say that another action that can be added to that is fostering the exchange. I mean, integrating perspectives from different contexts and backgrounds enriches the decision making. And this is particularly valuable in the sustainability landscape, where the environmental and social challenges require varied and creative approach. And a third part that I would add is having an active listening, providing channels as well for the people to give feedback and taking action based on the feedback. That's very important as well to me as part of the inclusive leadership. And when all these strategies are put into the practice, they not just help to build teams that reflect the values of equity and respect, but I think they improve also the ability of the project to generate a positive impact.
Javette, I'll go to you next.
Yeah, sure. I believe that, there are a couple of things that can occur. We talked about leadership, and that, of course, when you're talking leadership, then that also leads to the culture. And certainly the opportunity to listen and understand different perspectives, right? Internally, who are the decision makers? Who are the stakeholders with whom you're going to engage? And then externally, as Peter mentioned, we engage with suppliers, right? To bring them up to speed, to ensure that they understand this is the process that we have, whether it's Accenture or Citi, and this is what we're inviting you to participate in. Inclusivity, though, does really require dialogue, discussion, and, a willingness to listen and engage. And I think some of that does have to come with education, training, and awareness sessions too. So when I think about the Sustainable Development Goals as an example, I think that has been very helpful over the years to utilize those Sustainable Development Goals. And it doesn't have to be all 17, but at least 17 is an important one, because when you're talking partnership for the goals, this as an example with Sustainability Live is a great thing because we have the opportunity to share. But when you focus on certain other ones, 5 or 8 or 10 or whatever, that allows us to make sure there's some level of inclusion, that allows us to work internally to get people to thinking about the various interests that we have from a diversity perspective across the globe in all of our different countries. But then how do we culturally get on the right foot in terms of what we say we want to do? And that is to enhance and make diversity better, to ensure a more inclusive environment, and that we're all working together as a company to kind of row in the same direction.
And lastly to you, Peter.
Yes, and all very good points, great points. And I wanted to follow up on the awareness and education. I think it's also important that we engage people and stakeholders into making policies and strategies. I've come across a lot of organizations where, they demonstrate their commitment online and say, okay, our CEO is committed to supplier diversity and we're having a spend target of so many percentages. And then, you have interviews with the stakeholders internally and they say, well, we weren't part of that decision. So, we have different insights, we cannot make those commitments. But if you make them part of it, you make sure that they are part of the discussion and deliver input so that you really have a very informed target that you're developing. I think you get people much more engaged into doing this because they are part of the solution. And I think that's very important. And also you need to be very transparent about what you are trying to achieve, and making sure that you communicate that it's really part of your business or your company strategy overall, but also your ESG ambitions. You always want to make sure that you communicate very well that supplier diversity is part of ESG because it tackles the S of social. So we really want to make sure that people understand that and they see that relationship plus the relationship with the work that they do day to day, because then it becomes also much more exciting for them to be participating.
Brilliant. Talking hiring now, what would you say the benefits and also the challenges are of diverse hiring? Javier, should we start with you for this one?
Yeah, sure. I will start probably for the challenges. Because the main challenge nowadays on attracting and retaining diverse talent, it's related to the competition for sustainability talent that we see nowadays. There is a high demand for sustainability professionals. There is a very high competition to attract and retain diverse talent, because obviously companies are quite well aware of the benefits of this kind of professionals. So it might be difficult for small companies or companies with limited resources to attract these types of profile. That's in terms of challenges. On the other hand, when looking at the opportunities, I try always to look as well more on the opportunities. I think there is a good opportunity to promote alliances with educational institutions and communities. Establishing relationship links with institutions that have a high representation of diverse groups might help to make opportunities in sustainability feel more visible. And another point that I would highlight is that about the internship programs, which to me it's an outstanding opportunity to attract diverse talent in the early stages, and I see this definitely in the opportunities box.
Brilliant. Javette, should we go to you next?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Javier with respect to challenge being, quite frankly, the competition, because there's a lot of great diverse talent. So the good news is over the past 4 or more years, there's been more focus on where's diverse talent, right? Whether women-owned, ethnic minorities, or just everyone that fits in the diversity space. And so that's a good thing. However, because there's so much focus, the opportunities sometimes are not unable to be matched because there's just so much talent. But then I would say then the opportunities also can be challenging because there simply are not enough high-level opportunities at time. And to me, very similar to the point that Peter made with respect to supplier diversity, too often there's this assumption that the talent pool perhaps may be smaller or not the executive level pool. And so you kind of keep people only in, I would say, subject matter pool or manager pool versus considering there are some who belong in executive pool. And so what do you do to ensure that you truly create those opportunities? Then finally, I'll say that the other perhaps challenges, I think the key thing too is from a cultural perspective, making sure to get back with talented folks. But I think the benefit is we have a lot of diverse talent. The benefits are that, you know, those talented people are not just in one place in the world. They are all across the globe, and that we have the opportunity to really try to figure out what are some wonderful opportunities and ways that we can integrate that talent into both supplier diversity space or supply chain sustainability space, and especially now with respect to environmental social governance proper.
And I know, what about at BAT?
Very similar challenges. Definitely, I think now the environment is much more friendly in terms of providing diverse talent pool. Though sometimes organizational-wise, let's say we don't have some time yet and the luxury to spend more to investigate for more diverse teams. I think that's a number one challenge. Sometimes we have to close it as soon as possible and might skip super duper opportunities. And I think that's a number one challenge. As for the opportunity, I think with the transformation that the digital technologies are bringing, it's definitely opening a lot of doors to bring more potential, more talent that can be visible to us and we can see as well to reach. I mean, in comparison to previous decade when it was like more or less, let's say paper-based and we were limited to certain geography. Now it's much better in that regard. So I think this is an opportunity with the transformation and a challenge, sometimes not enough time to spend on a quality, diverse talent.
Brilliant.
If I can make one point
yes,
too,
of course.
I would say also, given the pandemic, right? Previously, we were all very focused on everyone had to be in place, right, at a building, right, the exact building to do the job. And I think what time has opened up is the opportunity for people to be in different places, even globally, and still be able to do good work. So I think that has become previously what may have been a challenge from a geographical perspective has now also presented an opportunity based on, as Ina said, the technology opportunities that have also opened up.
And you can see that, right, because we are from all across the world.
Yeah, that's actually now the proof.
Exactly.
And one thing I wanted to mention is it's not just about attracting, but also retaining talent. And especially for us, it's important with our 780,000 employees, that we want to keep our talent. And I want to make sure that they see themselves reflected in the organization that we are. And one of the things I've been running, also again from a supply chain perspective, is that I've done a project where we partnered with our technology providers to make sure that all the technology, web-based technology that we're using is accessible for persons that need assistive technology, persons with disabilities. And I came across a lot of issues there. And it really helped that we started that conversation because, especially during COVID, a lot of people had to work from home. And if you have to rely on technology and you cannot access it the same way as I could, you cannot do your job, and therefore you cannot pursue a career. And before you know it, you can lose your job, or you have to move to another company. So it's very important that we also look at, our policies, our technology, that it is accessible, but also policies. Like one other point I quickly wanted to make is, I myself am gay. It's very important that, especially a global company, has certain policies in place that can make sure that, for instance, relocation is possible for people if they cannot work in the market that they are because of who they are, but also that you have an HR policy where people can change their gender. So all those things, sometimes small things, but can be so important for an individual, so that it will help them to really feel comfortable working there and really be that talent that we want them to be for our company.
Amazing.
It's important that the fundamental certain policies should be there in order to ensure like basic security and safety, so people can feel comfortable, to feel themselves who they are, to be open with the organization. And by default, we are all diverse, but sometimes we wear the mask to be as everyone. And that's, I think, the place for improvement, where we can help all ourselves to be the ones who we are.
Yeah, incredible. I'm going to go to some questions from our audience now. Thank you very much to everyone who's been sending them in, because I feel like it's really relevant. It's asking about how we can make leadership more diverse, which I feel like links back to how we can make employees and people within the companies feel more comfortable in being their authentic selves. So do you have any advice for that sort of question, how we can make leadership more diverse?
I would say perhaps one thing, as an example, most probably get, voice of the employee surveys or things of that nature. I really encourage people to participate and provide that kind of feedback. Often you're asked questions about leadership and how people manage you, but you also have the opportunity to provide written comments. And so, if there's a concern about leadership, whether there are not enough, LGBTQIA leaders or neurodiverse leaders who can talk about neurodiversity, or Black or Asian or whomever, women, etc. I think we owe it to ourselves to then have those conversations, right? And I think also everything is about communication and awareness, and we're all leaders. So what can we do as a part of our current roles to try to advocate for those things and create awareness sessions where you are having your own voice of the employee sessions, or speaking on a certain topic, whether it is coaching or development or advancement, and then having certain leaders come so that you also then have those leaders participate and you can share concerns that way as well. So I think the key thing is to be able to communicate what the thoughts are, and then put it forward that if there is some, concern or interest in seeing a more diverse leadership, I'm really asking those questions and, putting forward, some conversation and dialogue opportunities for it to occur.
Amazing. Thank you. Javier, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah. Thinking about hearing what Javed was saying, I would add probably a couple of things. And totally agree on what you said, Javed. I would add probably that if the company can structure a kind of offering leadership development program to certain groups as well, would be as well good to foster this inclusivity and diversity in leadership. Because we're giving them the tools to become actual leaders, and providing the skills. And probably another thing that I would mention, it would be including this kind of aspects into the targets or the objectives of the ESG strategies. Having the leadership diversity in a form of a KPI helps as well to push to this aspect.
Brilliant. Peter, do you have anything to add?
I think the excellent points are already made. I think definitely speak up. If you feel that you're in a team where leadership is not as you don't feel comfortable, and it can be bullying. It can be lots of things. It can be bias, unconscious or conscious. Speak up. Make sure that those leaders understand that their actions, their words or their actions have consequences for the people that are in their team, and that can also make them a good leader. Don't just sit and undergo it, but really have a conversation with them. I had some of those conversations along the line of my career myself, but it helps them because you get the feedback back. It helps them to become a better, but also a more diverse leader because they understand it better.
Brilliant. And I know?
Absolutely agree with my colleagues. And in my case, I mean, diversity, I think from fundamentally, we are all different. It's just diversity like an iceberg, yeah? Some differences can be visible, some not. Sometimes if we don't see it, it doesn't mean that we are the same. So basically, in my place, we try to promote our differences through so-called local programs and communicate, yeah, what Jared said, with a Leader Week podcasts where the leaders stand out, take an hour and tell about themselves, how they're different, their thinking process, decision-making process, personality type, whatever makes them different, and that's brilliant. Yeah? So I think definitely communicating, sharing, promoting, and as Peter said, not being kind of afraid, embracing and accepting, celebrating the differences. I think that's very important.
We've spoken a little bit about challenges, but Eleonora is asking, could you give some advice to work through challenges that come from stereotypes or more traditional views or internal barriers when promoting D&I? Peter, do you want to get started with this one?
Sure. I think we have to come back to education, making sure that people understand each other's differences. We have some great, and I think Javier was also touching on leadership training. I think it's important that you give the right kind of training and education to people using real life examples. I know that we have conscious bias training for the LGBTIQ+ community where we have people from our community standing in front of groups and teams and just, sharing who they are, that they actually are exactly the same like they are, right? They play hockey or soccer. They like to watch soccer as well, or do things, very boring things as well. They're not always the stereotypes that people think of them. So making sure, build that awareness, also let people ask questions, and share their concerns so that you have a proper conversation about how can we bridge those difficulties, those challenges. I think eventually will work better. And I think, we have a lot of challenges in the world right now where that is caused by people having certain stereotypical thinking about other people. And I think we can cross that, and definitely within the corporations that we work in.
Brilliant. Javier, do you want to take it next?
Yeah, sure. So I agree with what Peter said on unconscious bias. That was probably one of the biggest one to me. Another one that I could mention, which is quite strongly linked, is to the resistance to change, especially in many big traditional companies. That is something that can be easily arised. And a third one that I would mention to me is the difficulty of measuring and reporting the impact on D&I. I mean, I work in sustainability, so I work in a broader spectrum, let's say. So when I work in the environmental side of sustainability, in terms of KPIs and measuring, is quite easy because kilowatt hours, tons of CO2 are easily tracked, and we have a lot of quantitative KPIs. But when it's coming to D&I, is the impact of it is much more complex to quantify, which it makes a little bit more difficult to track and to demonstrate the actual value of the inclusion within of these topics within the company's strategy.
Ainhoa, I'll come to you next.
Thank you. Very brilliant question. And I think implementing, and this is like a change, if organization didn't have a DNA to implement, it should be done with the typical change management process. So in handling the resistance in my organization, I like this proverb, a Chinese one, which says tell me and I will forget, show me and I may remember, involve me and I will understand. So definitely we try to find opinion leaders within organizations who speak with the team and understand their fears. Usually resistance comes with what? With fear of unknown. And definitely, as Peter said, it's education, continuous, relentless, showing that it is okay, it is normal, this is effective, this is good. And whenever you continue and educate, and these opinions are done by impactful opinion leaders, eventually it will change. And one of the important things as well is continuing, Peter, was what you said with the policies and procedures. There should be some policy and procedure in terms of disciplinary action if someone is not following the business conduct and behavior. Because if it's a norm, we have to have the set of rules. Yeah, it shouldn't be acceptable, not okay things. So that can be educated, and that definitely will change the mindset, behavior, and eventually will be embedded into DNA of organization.
Absolutely, and I think also no retaliation. Make sure that if people speak up, there are no consequences.
Yes, yes, that's a brilliant comment. Thank you.
And Javette, do you have any thoughts?
Sure. I'm going to go with, thinking about proverbs or mottos or mantras. I think for me in undergrad, ours was I'll find a way to make one. And so for me, over time, 25 years in the supply chain and 16 at Citi, even as a leader, you run into situations where there is resistance or there's a challenge with trying to, create that opportunity for, how do people see you or how do you get engaged? And so I think the other way, like I said, the partnership for the goals is key for me, because one of the things for me is a best practice over time is to utilize my peers in other countries. So whether that's Accenture or whomever it is, I like to have best practice sessions to bring people internal so they can see me by seeing other people. Here's what I've shared with you. I've tried to show you. Now let me, I've told you. Now let me show you. Back to Ina's point. And so showing by way of utilizing other customers as an example and or suppliers certainly is helpful. And I think to specifically, I guess, hopefully answer the question that was asked, I think there's a lot of mentoring, development, and sponsorship. I think that even us as leaders, we have that opportunity to determine, based on the work that we do, I start to include my mentees in some of the things that I do, whether or not they're in my space. But if I include them in supply chain sustainability aspect, if I want them to understand ESG or supplier diversity proper, by inviting them to different things, by extending what I do across the corporation, not just with corporate sustainability, ESG or rep risk or third party management, but let's see who's in community development and other people so that you can get advocates that also know that this is important across the firm, so that you also can allow yourself to have greater visibility and leadership. And then the other thing is looking at other leadership programs, what's available from an awareness perspective that allows for greater leadership and opportunity for growth, so that all of this body of work can feel like it belongs to everyone, including those who are leading. So I hope we answer the question that was asked by the person.
Well, I think at the very least, you've inspired a lot of people to to go out there and have a look and learn some more, because I've been asked, what DE&I research frameworks or tools would you recommend? So Javette, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. For me, one of the things that I love that I've had the opportunity to do at Citi is to be a coach or a lead navigator and things like that. So we have programs like, iLead or, capstone kind of programs. But having the opportunity to be a coach and lead and see other experienced leaders participate, learn to work together as partners, and then graduate from certain kind of programs because they are learning to team or they're teaming in a different way. They're not working within their same group. So I would say look into your HR folks and whatever the level you are, seeing what are the programs and that may be in place, for you in terms of leadership and growth from a diversity perspective. Look and see across the corporation what are exactly in place regarding different committees. Is there an environmental social governance committee where people are talking about practices and policies and you can kind of shadow and be a part of it? Is there a DEI committee where you can be a part of that? Is the community development team doing different kinds of things? So I think that's important. Also, if within your firm, there may be a book club that people have started across the ERG groups. So there are just so many things. If you're not a part of an ERG group, consider becoming a part of an ERG group. Consider becoming a part of a green group as well, which is what we have one of ours from an ESG perspective, but you may have green procurement, you may have ESG proper, you may DEI, but consider some groups within the firm that you might have that give you the opportunity to engage. And then I'm an avid book reader, so I'm happy to share books with someone later about kind of books that I'm in. And then externally for me too, is that volunteering. I volunteer. I'm a part of like the State Bar Association from an ESG perspective and other things that help to kind of fill me up and keep me passionate about my actual day-to-day work.
Wow, you're definitely going to keep the audience busy, I think. I know, do you have any more frameworks, tools, research, anything like that to recommend?
Nothing coming to my mind.
No, that's absolutely fine. Javier?
Well, I would say what I know the most, probably because of the company I make part of, is certification. So there are some of them that recognize as well the level of maturity of the companies in this field. EDGE is one of them, which is a certification about diversity, inclusivity, and so on. That is the one that I can recommend. But as well, if I look at this from other front, well, there are many as well analytic and tracking tools to, as we were saying, automatize HR processes and remove the unconscious bias. Most of them are in the market and are well known. And as well, probably, and no, it's not a tool, but it's a way as well of measuring how good, let's say, are you doing in the field of the specific ratings, I would say. For instance, I used to know the one that it was the Refinitiv that recently changed to the FTSE Diversity Index. So that's another way, or we can call it tool, that the companies can use to measure somehow their level of maturity in diversity and inclusion.
Brilliant. Javette, we have had another comment coming through specifically asking for your book recommendations, so I think you're going to have to put a post up or something. Peter, do you have anything to round us out with that one?
We're going to call it Javette's book club. I think following Pierre's point and also Javette on tools, I think engagement service definitely can be a good tool to use to get anonymously people's perspectives and insights about the level of diversity within the organization. I can help you. An external one I like a lot is I don't know if you ever heard of it, is the Disability Equality Index that Disability In does. It's really great. It's about disability in inclusion, but I think it touches all forms of inclusion, I think. And it really can help you benchmark yourself on how diverse your organization is. I know when it comes to supply chain diversity, I know MSD UK does a really great benchmark on the level of supply diversity for your company. And another thing I wanted to mention, and I think you mentioned ERGs as well, I think invite ERGs to your team. Maybe somebody with a disability, let them speak about their day-to-day work life, so that you get a better understanding of how it is to be part of a certain community, the challenges, the opportunities, maybe the fabulous things that come with it. It also helps people to understand it better. Especially our unconscious bias training that I mentioned before, they were specifically done by a Pride group, and they are a really great success.
If I could just quickly say locally, and because I'm going to say education-wise, look at eCornell. That's like one thing for diversity certificate, Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council, and their Sustainability Navigator. But check locally, wherever you are globally, from a university perspective, there may be different online courses, et cetera, that offer some different resources on sustainability, diversity, modern slavery, human rights, any and all of those things that are part of our jobs. And that may be important to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We have had more questions come through that I'm afraid we're not just going to get through. We've only got a few more minutes, if that. So would you be okay to round me up if one action that people can take away from this that they can do to better champion diversity and inclusion in their organisations? Peter, do you want to start us off?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
So just one action that people can take away from this that you would suggest doing to better champion diversity and inclusion in their organizations.
Oh gosh. I will go again with, look around you, your colleagues, and just approach somebody and ask them, how do you feel? I think that's also important. How do you feel today? What are the things that are going on in your community? What are the things that are going on in your world? Just start a conversation. I think starting a conversation will also help to understand each other better within your organization, and it also helps you to form an idea about how things are going. And I think that's what I would suggest.
Brilliant, thank you, Javier.
Yeah, I would say, following on Peter's suggestion to evaluate, the current situation, but one thing that I would think it's crucial in here, and it was mentioned by some of the colleagues during the panel, it's training and education. I mean, training and education to me, it's the cornerstone of building a culture of respect in a company. So it would be the first thing that I would look at when trying to assess the level of maturity of my company in terms of diversity. And the second thing, well, I don't know if talking about the first thing and the second thing, because to me both are quite equally important, but the second thing is the commitment of top management, the real commitment of top management.
Brilliant, I know.
So I sorry, just to finish, I will go to talk to them to have their vision on this topic.
Brilliant, and I know?
The same. I wanted to add, like Javier said, I think number one thing that I would recommend to ensure that the D&I will appear in SLA, so it's like part of strategic leadership agenda, that will ensure definitely certain commitments and action will appear. And on top of what Peter says, there are a lot of cool instruments like ENPS, anonymous one, or whatever that you can ask your community itself, like even simple one on a scale of 1 to 10, how diverse you think your team. So that I think would be very honest answer of your organization, how comfortable and satisfied they feel. And then action plan can be created.
Brilliant. And last but not least, Javette, but I am going to have to say, ask for a quick and snappy response, please.
Yes, each of us be the change that we want to be. So engage with people, get involved, as everyone has said, reach out to someone who you admire or whose team you want to be a part of and advocate for, and just do it.
Incredible. Well, what an inspiring panel. Thank you all for joining us today, and have a wonderful rest of your days. Bye, everyone.